Always a pleasure to have my next guest on the show. It's Chris Camozzi, who's got another big fight, this time against Dan Spohn at BKFC 41 on April the 29th. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Counting down the days.
Yes, sir. It'll be here before you know it. And I know we've been trying to coordinate an interview for a couple of weeks now, but I know you got sick for a little while, right? How are you feeling now, and how did that affect in the last couple of weeks of camp?
Yeah, I got a little bit sick. It was weird, like fever, cough, all that stuff. I was just down for 4 or 5 days. Nothing too bad. Obviously I took those days off of training, but my cardio, all my training, everything had been pretty on point. So missing those couple days wasn't a big deal. And then, I make up the sparring sessions and stuff. And yeah, my body feels great. Actually, I was real happy. I was a little nervous. I'm like, how's my cardio going to be coming back from being sick? But luckily it was far enough out from the fight and everything came just right back to normal. So
Okay,
we're good.
that's good to hear, man. I know with some fighters that I've spoken to in the past, if they get sick right in the middle of camp, it kind of throws things off whack because you have everything dialed in, week to week, what you're going to be doing. So I'm happy to hear that it really didn't affect you all that much.
Oh yeah. I've done this long enough where I know how to handle it. And luckily, I don't get sick very often. I haven't been sick in probably 3 or 4 years, but I don't take a bunch of medicine. I let my body, kill it itself. And I think that that's why I don't get too sick and I bounce back.
Okay, good to hear, man. How has camp been? Who've been the training partners around you this time? Anyone new, or pretty much the same guys as usual?
Usually the same guys. I would say there's another guy, Keegan Sampson, who fought on the last bare knuckle card with me. He won by, I think it was first round knockout as well. He started coming to Genesis and he's been one of my main sparring partners because he's about 6'4". He can fight southpaw. He's been a great addition. The guy's got endless cardio, really good boxing. And it's been fun because especially throwing in somebody new for a training camp just makes it more difficult for me as opposed to guys where we all get so familiar with each other, where I'm like, okay, I know Grant's good at this. This is what he looks for. And same thing for him. So bringing in a new guy, it was kind of like fighting every week.
I was going to ask, you mentioned him. So how's my guy Grant Neal doing? I'm sure he must have a fight around the corner, right?
Nothing that we could say yet. I think he's got some things on the table. He's also getting married this summer. So I believe he left for his bachelor party today. I think he's hitting up Vegas, and unfortunately I couldn't go.
Oh, that's too bad. Vegas. Yeah, that's always fun. I was down there for maybe not my bachelor party, but a little bit before then I made a trip to Vegas. So that's always fun. Do you have a favorite spot in Vegas if you do go out?
It just depends. I don't do a lot of clubs or anything. They got great food. I don't know. It depends on what the trip vibe is like.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. It depends on who you're with and all that as well. And I know you got a very serious girlfriend as well. I'm not sure if you're engaged yet or not, but I saw on your Instagram that she's going to have a fight around the corner, right? So tell me a little bit about that.
She is. So it'll be her first fight. It's an influencer boxing tournament. So we leave tomorrow actually for London because she'll fight next Saturday. So the 22nd will be her first fight. And it's a really cool show. It's called Kingpin Boxing. It's KINGPYN. And it'll be a pay-per-view. And she's guaranteed 3 fights, and it's at these massive arenas. Like she's fighting at Wembley, she's fighting at the O Arena in Ireland, or in Dublin. And yeah, so I've been training her, and she's also been boxing at Genesis, and she's all set to go, man. I'm super impressed with, she's hit pads for a long time, but getting into like real sparring. And I told her, if you're going to do it, we're doing this for real. Like you're going to do a real fight camp. You're going to do everything like a professional. And she stuck to her word and has done that. And the progress she's made has been amazing. So I can't wait to see her go out there and get it done.
And I'm assuming you're going to be in her corner come fight night.
I am, yeah. So myself and then one of the other boxers from our gym are flying out with her tomorrow. So I'll finish up my training camp in London, and it'll be nice. It'll be a good little break, change of scenery. I've got guys to train with, like I said, we've got another boxer going with, so him and I are going to be hitting 2 a day still.
All right, very good. And I know that she's probably just going to go in there and kill it. She's going to do great, right? But how do you think your nerves are going to be cage side watching her getting ready to get into a fight?
Oh, I'm sure it'll be nerve-wracking a bit, but I got to wear 2 hats, right? When I go there, I'm not her boyfriend. I'm her head corner and coach, and um, I'm somewhat used to it. You know, my sister-in-law, Brittany Camozzi, she fights professionally. My brother, Brian Camozzi, was in the UFC and fought for a long time, and I've cornered them, and it's always different. Anytime I corner friends, you're always nervous. Friends, family, because you have no control over what happens. You know, when I fight, I don't get too nervous because I have all the control. Um, but I'm really happy with all of her preparation and training and super confident.
Very cool. I also wanted to ask you about your podcast that you do. It's on the Fit Soda Media YouTube channel. It's called Involuntary Yoga. Tell me what your goals are here with this podcast. It looks like it's really starting to take off, and I watched a couple the other day. You're really killing it.
Oh, thank you. It takes some practice. I'm sure you know your interviews are almost like mini podcasts too. But yeah, the podcast is called Involuntary Yoga. Basically, what that is like a pun on jujitsu. We've always said that at my gym. We call like that's another word for jujitsu. You know, I'm gonna bend you when you don't want to bend, or I'm gonna fold your clothes with you in them. For me, my goal, I don't really know what my goal is yet. Obviously, I want it to blow up, but I'm just having fun doing it. I'm trying to um, highlight different aspects of the sport. When I started sitting down thinking about all the stories I have and all the people I know, I didn't want to make it just a normal like fight podcast. Like, here's my picks for this weekend and all about the UFC. I still do give like fight picks and stuff, but you know, I had Burt Watson on there, who was the UFC head of operations. I've had other people from different aspects of the sport on there. I want to have managers on there. I want to have promoters and matchmakers and kind of show the sport as a whole, even like ring card girls, just because everybody has a little different take on the sport. So it's been really cool to have some fun conversations with people. I don't know if you remember him. I just had Dorian Price on, so that one will be coming out soon. And all of his stories and trips to Thailand and, you know, doing everything the hard way and living in the camps and stuff. It's just a cool way to have conversations with people about like the stuff that I love. So
Well, you're doing a great job, man. I'm looking forward to watching it continue to evolve, as I'm sure it will. And you know, Chris, as a longtime middleweight in the UFC, I have to get your take on what just happened with Adesanya and Pereira. Adesanya knocked him out cold, reclaimed the belt. How how good do you feel like Izzy is as far as big picture all time greats at 185?
I mean, he's amazing. Yeah, if you follow my podcast, I actually picked him to win that fight. So I was happy about that. I felt like it was a must win for him because, you know, you can't lose to a guy 4 times. Obviously, he lost 3 times. 2 of them were in kickboxing. One of them was in the UFC. And you know as well as I do, if Pereira were to beat him again, Adesanya would probably be the one changing weight classes because it's really hard to get a third title shot, especially if you're 0-2. So I knew it was a must-win situation. And then I went back and I watched their old kickboxing fights and that stuff and past fights. And Izzy had hurt him every time. He's the faster guy. He moves more, everything. And Pereira just always seemed to find that one shot that would get him. So I was banking on Izzy tightening everything up. I know that I don't know him personally, but from interviews and stuff, he's very, what's the word? He like fixates on it. So I'm sure he watched the video over and over again. And I felt like he dominated almost every round in the previous fight, if I remember right. So being able to tighten those things up, I thought that there was a chance he could get the win. But both those guys are amazing, man. I mean, they could go back and forth probably every single time they fight. I'm excited to see Pereira at 205. I thought that he's probably too big for 185 anyway. I don't know how much he cuts, but I would rather see him at 205. And I think that there's some really cool matchups for him. I'd like to see him fight Dustin Jacoby again. I know he beat Jacoby in Glory, but MMA is different. And, you know, obviously Jamal Hill, that makes for a great story with Pereira because Jamal Hill beating Glover Teixeira, who's like his mentor. And I just remember seeing when they were in the cage after Glover lost, Pereira was just like staring at him. And I was saying it then, I'm like, that fight would be awesome. You could sell that. And I think Pereira beats him.
You do? Okay. Well, I'd love to see it. As far as all-time best at 185, has Izzy caught Anderson Silva, or does he still have a little bit of work to do to reach the spider?
I mean, I would say there's still some more time in there. Obviously that first loss to Pereira sets him back a little bit, but I mean, he's on his way to being one of the greats. I'm trying to think how many fights he's had. He's had quite a few title defenses and stuff. But I think he's real close to being considered one of the all-time greats, and he's going to get there for sure. I don't see very many people below him giving him a fight. I'm trying to think of who else is ranked below him at 185 that he hasn't beat.
Well, there's Duplessis right now that they've been going back and forth a little bit in social media. So there's a chance that that fight could happen. Hamzat's going up to 185. And so he's going to be thrown right in the mix. So I think one of those two would probably make the most sense if they don't give it to Bobby Knuckles.
Yeah. The first guy, Duplessis, is that how you say it?
Yeah. Dricus Duplessis, if I'm saying that right.
He's is he South African guy?
Yep.
Okay. Just make sure I had the right guy. Yeah. I watched him fight quite a bit. I don't think that he has the tools to beat him. I think that he gets lit up on the feet, and I don't think that he can close the distance to get Adesanya down. Hamza is interesting. I think that with him going up a weight class, he's going to have to get one or two fights in there and prove himself in that weight class. But we'll see. I mean, that stylistically is a fun matchup.
Yeah. I mean, I think regardless of who he's going to fight next, there's still a couple of fun matchups left for him at 185. So, and Izzy's such a draw. He's charismatic. I feel he's got the whole package. So I'm excited now that Pereira's going up. We'll see what shakes out with who both of their next opponents are going to be moving forward. As far as you, Chris, this upcoming fight will be at 205 again, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
No more 185 for me. I can't make it anymore.
Very good. What's the weight at right now?
Let's see. I walk around like 220. I kind of always have. I was between 215, 220, and I was cutting a middleweight. And when I was younger, it was a little bit easier. It was never easy, but I had some horrible cuts. And just a few years ago, I was like, man, I can't do it anymore. I just got to go up because it was like just miserable too. Now I'm enjoying it. You know, I can show up, I can diet down to 205. I don't really have to cut, and I get to enjoy like the process of training and everything. I don't spend it having to burn calories and burn weight and do all that miserable stuff. So I think that that's kind of what's kept me fighting still, is that I'm really enjoying it now.
And with BKFC, this upcoming event, BKFC 41, it's going to be in Broomfield, Colorado. So I have to imagine you're going to have a lot of people there supporting you in attendance. Do you feel like you're going to have a significant home crowd advantage here as far as this fight goes?
Yeah, I mean, always here. I think it's like that for anybody's hometown, but you know, I've grown up here and started my career here, and I've got a really cool, loyal, like fan base, family, friends. So every time I fight here, because it's been fewer and further between, as my career got bigger, I'm not here as often. So every time I am, and everybody comes out, and it's great. You know, they blow the roof off. Denver's a big fight town.
Mike Perry, Luke Rockhold is the main event. Who do you see winning that fight?
I don't know. It's interesting. You know, I think technically Rockhold is probably one of the best fighters that's been in MMA. Like, as far as if we're looking at MMA, jiu-jitsu, his striking was always great. He had all the tools, and then there was just some certain slip-ups he had. But bare knuckle's a little bit different. It's more of like a brawl, and it's in your face. It's fast-paced. Perry has the experience with bare knuckle, and he's also, you know, he's a bit crazy where he's just going to go after it. So I've gone back and forth. I know Luke has had quite a few injuries in the past, and one thing with bare knuckle was I had to change the way I punched a little bit to make sure that, you know, I don't shatter my hand. And I did recently see a video of him hitting mitts where it's a little bit scary. Like, if you take the gloves off and throw like that, it's a little different. So, you know, I hope it doesn't end from injury, but I could see a broken hand in that one. Man, if I have to pick, it's got to be Rockhold, because he's a lot bigger. He's quick on his feet. He's very technical, but Perry's always got that dog, so you never know.
Yeah, no, that's a good analysis.
I saw Luke where I do strength and conditioning the other day, actually, and he got out here like April 1st, I guess he was telling me. So it's good to see him get here early because he said the altitude was definitely hurting. I just wonder how early Perry will come out too, because it's going to matter in those later rounds.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a great card. There's a lot of great fights in this card. A lot of big name fighters like yourself. I believe Brandon Gertz is also fighting. Have you seen him around this camp?
Oh yeah, Gertz and I train at the same gym, so I see
Yep.
him every day.
Right. Well, that's what I figured. So I just figured you might be able to give me a little inside info as to how he's looking.
Oh man, Gertz is like a little badger. He'll I don't know. I was just giving him shit the other day. He doesn't really spar. He like fights. Every time. I mean, I'm never in there with him. I'm a lot bigger, but all the guys at the gym know every time you got around with Gertz, like it's go time. He's great for bare knuckle, and his cardio is always good, and he goes in there to hurt people. So he's super exciting to watch, and I'm pumped to be back on the card with him. Then we also have Josh Copeland, who recently got changed to Ben Rothwell's opponent. So that's another good one because Josh has crazy power, a little bit unorthodox striking. Him and I spar a lot, and punches come from where you wouldn't think. He's got a little bit more of like a looping style, but then he'll bring him straight. So that's an interesting one because Rothwell is a big guy to be in there with too. So Josh is going to have to hit and move.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I've always been a big fan of both Ben Rothwell and Brandon Gertz. So I'm excited to see this card, man. Let's talk about Dan Spohn, your opponent, 19-8-1. He fought in PFL for quite a long time. He was on The Ultimate Fighter a few seasons ago. This is his BKFC debut. What do you think he's going to bring to the table? What kind of a fight do you expect this one to be?
I'm super familiar with Dan actually because we were in the PFL tournament together. And that was during like the quarantine times. So the first fight we were quarantined for 17 days before the fight, which was basically locked up in the hotel, but there were common areas. And so I ended up spending quite a bit of time with like Dan and his team, eating lunch, talking to him. I can't remember. I think we trained together, but I'm not positive. Even though it wasn't that long ago, it just seems like a blur. But I'm super familiar with him. He's been around a long time. I've seen him fight a ton of times. He's a lefty like me. For some reason, I keep getting left-handers. I feel like I've fought so many southpaws in my career, and I always do great against him. I hate training for him, and fight-wise, I can't think of a southpaw that I've lost to. So I think that we have a very solid game plan, and I'm very familiar with Dan. And he's tough. He's a hard guy to put away. So I just got to make sure that I hit, move, land where I need to. I need to be precise. I think bare knuckle is a lot more about being precise than it is just winging punches, even though you see guys throwing overhand after overhand, because there is that factor of breaking your hand, and it doesn't take a lot to knock somebody out. You saw my last fight, like I didn't throw that hook nearly as hard as I could have. We've just been working on keeping punches tight, not looping, not big. And my coach is big on like, you don't have to hit them with everything, just land it right and they go out.
Do you think you put him out, or is this fight going to go to the judges? What's your official prediction here?
No, I think I can put him away, and I think that I'm going to do it quick.
Now, last time we did talk, Chris, you called out Lorenzo Hunt. You wanted that title fight. He beat Mike Richmond in February, so he still has the gold around his waist. Is that a fight that you feel like really could come to fruition next if you get this win, obviously?
Definitely. I mean, that's what they're telling me. They told me to get another knockout, and then we'll be looking at the title. It's interesting because when this fight came about before I had an opponent, I was asking to fight. I looked down the rankings and I was like, let me fight this guy. Let me fight this guy, this guy. Any of the guys that have been in bare knuckle for a while, because that was criticism that I heard last fight. Like, oh, you beat a guy that washed out of the UFC and so did you and blah, blah, blah. But none of the guys that have been around bare knuckle seem to want to fight. I know that there's I forget some of their names now because I wasn't really familiar with them. I just went and looked at the website and watched some video, and I think I asked for like the top 4 or 5 guys. And they recently crowned a UK champion for some reason. So I was like, let me go fight that guy. I win that belt, then I'll fight Lorenzo here. And that didn't happen. I tagged all of them on a story post. They all watched it. None of them responded. So we'll see. I do want to fight one of the guys that's been around bare knuckle for a while too, just to shut people up and also prove that, it's not a fluke.
Well, man, I can't wait to see what is next for you. Obviously, Dan Spohn is next, April 29th, BKFC 41. You get that win, maybe the title fight that you're hoping for. Chris, it's always a pleasure, man. I really enjoy speaking with you. Before we do sign off, man, I want to kick it over to you. Tell people where they can follow you on social media. If you have anyone to thank, any sponsors, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm most active on Instagram. So that's at Chris Camozzi MMA. And like you mentioned before, check out my podcast, Involuntary Yoga. That's on the Fit Soda Media YouTube page. We put a bunch of fun content out there. I work for Fit Soda. Not all of it's fight related, but I think that you'll enjoy the channel. And then, yeah, thank you to my team at Genesis, all my coaches at Landau Performance, my sponsors. I've got OnlyFans, I've got Half Face Blades, I've got Levethian Defense, My Fit Foods. I think that was most of them right now. But yeah, I can't wait to get back in there, and thank you for BKFC for another fight and coming back to Denver.